The next step in finite element analysis is derivation of element matrix and the vectors associated with the engineering problem. So in this step we will be taking the example of three different engineering fields associated with mechanical engineering. In the first example, we will consider one-dimensional heat transfer phenomena across a particular fin. So you can see that the cross-sectional shape of the fin is continuously changing as we are moving towards the x direction. So at a particular location, at a particular distance x from the origin, we will select a differential element dx. So in the differential element, Qx is the amount of the heat that will be entering into the system, and Qx plus dx is the amount of the heat that will be leaving the system at a distance of dx. For this particular cross section or for this particular differential element, we can assume that the cross sectional area is constant. This physical phenomena can be expressed by using this partial differential equations, which is the first term will relate to heat conduction throughout the element. It will involve here thermal conductivity. A stands for the area of the cross section, and curl T by curl X will be the temperature difference between the across the length of the differential element. Q is the heat generation per unit volume, and A is the area of the element. This total will be equal to Cp curl T by curl T. So here capital T represent the temperature and small t represent the time. P is the density of the differential element and C is the specific heat, that is the amount of the heat required to raise the temperature of the element by 1 degree Celsius. The second example is considered for the one-dimensional fluid flow across a pipe of the varying cross-sectional area. Here u is the velocity at the one face of this pipe. So the mathematical model of this system can be represented by using this partial differential equation. Here rho is the density of the fluid, A is the area of the cross section at a particular differential element, and phi is the stream function. So the differentiation of phi with respect to x will represent the velocity of the fluid at a particular cross section, and the derivative of whole and the multiplication of rho A dou differential of phi with respect to x will represent the quantity of the fluid flowing in a x direction at a particular cross section. So when the derivative of this volume with respect to x direction, it will represent the continuity equation in the x direction. And the third example is taken for a solid bar under constant axial load. So again the cross-sectional area of the bar is varying, and P is the load that will be applied at the one end or at the one face of the bar. So here the differential equation for a differential element is curl U by curl X will represent the strain rate at a particular cross section, and when it will be multiplied by E, that will be the Young's modulus of the material, it will represent the shear stress. Multiplied by A, we will be getting the shear force in that particular cross section for the differential element, and when we divide it by shear force by dx, we will be substituting it as 0. So this will be the mathematical model for a solid bar under constant axial load. So by using the finite element model, we will be converting these partial differential equation for each case into set of linear algebraic equation for the element which will be using to discretizing these domains along the x direction. Okay, so the final linear algebraic equations can be expressed as K into phi is equal to P. Here K represents the stiffness matrix associated with a particular element, and here rho, this phi will represent the displacement within the element or at the nodes within the element, and P will be the load that will be acting on the element. So the next step is that for each element we have established these linear equations. Now we will assemble these linear equations into a global equations for all the element, and then we will be solving the global equation for the deformation in each element or deformation at each node within the discretized domain. Now the elemental equation which can be modeled in the finite element method, they can be expressed in terms of the stiffness matrix and the load vectors. These equations can be developed by using three approaches. The first approach is the direct method. A direct method is based on direct physical reasoning to establish elemental properties. This means that the direct method is generally used for the 1D engineering or the physical problems that can be explained using the one-dimensional finite element analysis. Using direct method in 2D or 3D engineering application can generate inaccurate numerical results. Therefore, the direct method is only used for 1D finite element modeling, or you can say it can be used for developing and understanding for using this finite element method. Second method is the variational approach. In the variational approach, we will be using the variational calculus, that is differentiation and integration, to express a function which is a function of the partial derivatives of the primary field variable. Now we will be performing the extremization of this functional, that is we will be minimizing it or maximizing it to obtain the approximate expressions for the primary field variable. The third approach is weighted residual approach. In the third approach, we will be using the governing differential equation of the particular engineering problems, and in these differential equations we will be substituting approximate solution of the primary field variables. When we substitute approximate solution of primary field variables into these differential equations, we will be getting some kind of errors. Now we will be minimizing these errors over the entire solution domain, so that the approximate solution can approach the exact solution. The weighted residual approach can be used by using the Glarkin method, least square method, or point allocation method. So now we will discuss the direct method. So we will be using the direct method to derive the elemental matrix and the vector equations for the 1D problem. So in this approach we will be using the simple element which will be having linear interpolation or at max quadratic approximation of primary field variable within an element. This is just explained to develop a basic understanding of finite element method. Let us assume a situation in which we have a stepped bar. The one end of the bar is fixed and another end is free. At the free end we are applying external load which is denoted as P0. So the stepped part composed of three cross sections having A1 area, A2 area, A3 area, and these cross sections are running across L1, L2, L3 lengths. The Young's modulus within each of these steps are E1, E2 and E3. So now we will be describing this physical model into a finite element model. So here we will be using four nodes. One at the junction of the fixed point, that will be the node 1. Another at the junction of the step 1 and step 2, that will be named as node 2. Then the third node is at the junction of A2 and A3, and the fourth node will be at the free section. So the element 1 can be now categorized by L1, A1, E1, element 2 that will be connecting node 2 to node 3 will be characterized by L2, A2 and E2, and element 3 which will be connecting third node with the fourth node will be characterized by L3, A3 and E3. L, A and E are the length, area and Young's modulus for a particular step. So in the finite element model of the step beam or bar, we have three elements, element 1, element 2 and element 3. Now let us isolate each of these elements one by one for the analysis, for FEM analysis. So first isolate element 1. So the element 1 is formed by connecting node 1 and node 2. Let us assume that P1 force is acting at the node 1 and it will be producing U1 and U2 deflections at node 1 and 2. Similarly, a force P2 will be acting at the node 2. Now let us define a stiffness coefficient as force needed Kij as force needed at node I in the direction of Ui to produce a unit displacement at node J while all other nodes are constrained. So now the P1 force that will be acting at the node 1 will be contributing towards the displacement U1 at node 1 and U2 at node 2. Similarly, the force P2 that will be acting on the node 2 will also be contributing into the displacement U1 at node 1 and U2 at node 2. So, based on the definition of the stiffness coefficient Kij, we can define K11 as force at node 1 required to produce unit deflection at node 1 while another node U2 or another node is constant or U2 is equal to 0. So K11 is defined as force required to produce unit deflection at node 1, but actually the deflection at the node 1 is U1. So we will multiply K11 with U1. Similarly, K12 is the force required at node 1 to produce unit deflection at node 2 while the deflection at the node 1 is equal to 0. So K12 is the force required to produce unit deflection at node 2, but the total deflection at node 2 is U2. So when we multiply K11 with U1 plus K12 with U2, we will be able to get the force P1. Okay. Similarly, we can perform that K21 is the unit force applied at 2 to produce unit deflection at the node 1, and K22 is the unit force required to be applied at node 2 to produce unit deflection at 2. So from this concept we will be getting these two equations. Now we will using these two equations to generate the matrix equation for the first element. So we will be segregating U1 and U2 and P1 and P2 as separate column vectors and K11, K12, K21, K21 as 2 by 2 stiffness matrix. So for this element, first element, the elemental equation is Ke, that is the elemental stiffness matrix, into displacement matrix, which will be indicating displacement at node 1 and node 2, and the multiplication of these two matrices will be equal to P, that is the load vector at the load acting at the P1 and P2 nodes. So by now we have defined the stiffness matrix for the element, for the first element, and it is expressed in the terms of K11, K12, K21 and K22. Now we need to find the values of the K11. So by the definition, K11 is the force required at first node to produce unit deflection at the first node, means U1 is equal to 1, while the another node is constant, that is U2 is equal to 0. So by the first equation we will be having these expressions. So now substituting the value of the K11, U1 is equal to 1 and U2 is equal to 0 in this expression, we will get K11 is equal to P1. Now the value of the P1 we can get that it will be equal to direct stress due to P1 force into area of the element. So a direct stress we can get by using the strain, that will be the ratio of U1 deflection at the node 1 divided by the length of the element into Young's modulus. So this will be the value of the stress multiplied by area of the cross-sectional area of the element. We will be getting the value of K11 as EA divided by L. Now as node 2 is constant, a reaction force will be developing at the second node due to a unit deflection or the displacement at node 1. So we will be getting K21, that is force at node 2 due to unit deflection or displacement at node 1. So in order to get the value of K21, we will be using the second equation defined in the previous slide, that is this one equation. So now K21 U1 plus K22 into U2 is equal to P2. As of now U2 is equal to 0, so this term will vanish, and K21 U1 is already equal to 1, so K21 is equal to P2, the force at the second node. But the force at the second node will be the reaction of the force at the first node. So P21 will be equal to minus P1, and we already know that the value of the P1 is equal to EA by L. So K2, the value of the K21 will be equal to minus EA by L. Now let us find the value of the K22. So by the definition of the stiffness coefficient, K22 is the unit force required to that needs to be applied at the second node to produce a unit deflection at the second node, provided that the node 1 is constant or U1 is equal to 0 in case B. So we will be getting K22, U1 will be equal to 0 and U2 will be equal to 1. Now we will be using the second equation, this equation, and from this equation we will get U1 is equal to 1. The second term will be there, while the first term U1 is equal to 0, it will vanish. We will get K22 is equal to P2. So P22 will be equal to direct stress into area of the element, and the stress will now equal to U2 displacement divided by the length. It will be equal to strain multiplied by the Young modulus. We will get stress multiplied by the area of the element. We will be getting the force P2, and that will be defined as EA by L. Now as node 1 is constrained, a reaction force will be developed due to the action of P2 force at node 2. So we will be now be using the first equation. So in the first equation, what we are having here, that we are having that U1 is equal to 0 in the case B. So U1 will be equal to 0. We will be left with the second term K12 into U2. U2 is 1. It will be equal to P1. Now P1 will be the reaction of P2 force. So we will get K12 equal to P1 equal to minus of P2, and we will be getting K12 as minus EA E by LE. So why we are discussing this as case 1 and case A or case B? In case A, we are only referring to the force P1 and acting at the node 1, and we are rejecting the force P2. So we are using the superimposition principle. We are studying the forces one by one. In the case A, we will be studying only the force that will be acting at the node 1, and then we will be studying what will be the reaction developed due to the force P1 acting on the node 2 due to the force acting on the node 1. Similarly, in the case B, we will be studying the effect of the force P2 that will be acting on the node 2, so that a reaction will be developed on the node 1. So now the simultaneous solution for the element we have already expressed in this form, in the matrix form. Now we will be substituting the value of the K11, K12 in all this in this matrix form. So we will be changing by substituting the values of all these stiffness coefficient, we will be getting the values as EAE by LE, and the coefficient will be within the matrix will be reduced to 1, 1, minus 1 and 1. Okay, there is a mistake here. This term is positive and this is negative. So I will correct it, and then we will have the displacement matrix, and finally is the load matrix for the first element. Similarly, we will be developing the matrix for the second element and the third element. Second element will be connecting the node 2 and 3, and third element will be connecting the node 3 and node 4. Now let us develop the elemental matrix equation and the vectors for another problem. Consider a system of the springs connected in the series. So let us assume that there are n springs which are connected in the series. So there will be n elements and n plus 1 number of the nodes. Let us isolate the eth spring. Okay, so the eth spring is located by the ith and the jth node. Let us assume that the ui is the displacement at the ith node and uj is the displacement at the jth node. So Fi is the force that will be acting on the ith node, and Fj is the force that will be acting on the jth node. Now let us analyze the effect of Fi force on the ith node alone. In this case, we are disregarding the Fj and using the principle of superimposition, in which we will be considering one force at a time, and in the end we will be adding the effect of all the forces. So initially we will be taking the force Fi only and disregarding the Fj force. So let us assume that Ui and Uj are the displacement in the spring and Fi is the force acting on the spring. So the magnitude of the Fi force will be equal to Ke. Here Ke is the spring stiffness or the stiffness coefficient of the spring, and if we assume that Ui is greater than the Uj, then there will be the compression in the spring, and Fi will be equivalent to K into Ui minus Uj. Now let us take another case in which we will be disregarding Fi forces and we will be considering only the Fj force. So in this case we will be considering that Uj is greater than Ui. Okay, so Fj will be equivalent to Ke spring stiffness into Uj minus Ui. Now the spring will be under the tension. So the net effect of these two forces Fi, Fj can be considered by considering both the equations simultaneously. So we can write these equations as Ke is equal to Ui minus Uj is equal to Fi, and K into Uj minus Ui is equal to Fj. In the form of the matrix, we will separate the Ui and Uj into a column vector and Fi, Fj as the output vector. Now the K will be going into this matrix, stiffness matrix. As K is common to all the terms, it can be taken common and we will be reduced to only the unit terms within the matrix. So K multiply with this unity matrix where the diagonal terms are equal to 1 and off diagonal terms are equal to minus 1. This will form the stiffness matrix for this particular application. U will be form the displacement matrix, and F is the external force matrix. So from here also we are using the simple physics to establish the linear equation for the eth element. Okay, so K stiffness matrix for the eth element will be considered as Kii, Kij, Kji and Kjj. Similarly, the stiffness coefficient matrix for each of the element will be developed. For example, in case of the first element, E will be equal to 1, I will be equal to 1 and J equal to 2. So we will be getting K11, K12, K21 and K22. Now let us apply the same approach for the direct method to obtain the stiffness matrix or the elemental equation for heat flow through a composite layered wall. So in this composite layered wall, we are having four walls. The composite composite wall consists of 4 subwalls. So we will be identifying each subwall as individual element, and we will be naming the node as 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Now we will be isolating the first element. Okay, let's say K1, K2, K3 and K4 are the heat conduction coefficient through this or the thermal heat conductivity through these individual walls. So K1 will be the heat thermal conductivity for the isolated earth element, or simply we can take the first element as an isolated element. Now the heat conduction equation can be taken as Q is equal to minus Ke and the gradient of the temperature with respect to S, or with respect to the X direction. So we can assume dx is the thickness of this wall. So let us try to calculate the heat entering at the node x1. This is the x1. Let us assume that the temperature T1 on this side is greater than the temperature T2 on this side. This will be the first assumption. Okay, on the basis of this we will get Q1 is equal to minus of Ke. We are using minus sign because temperature drop will occur along the direction of the heat flow. So we will be getting T2 minus T1. That is how the gradient will be defined as final temperature minus initial temperature divided by the thickness of the wall. Okay. Now let us assume that second condition, that the heat is entering at the node x2 and leaving from the x1. So when heat is entering at the node x2, we can assume that T2 temperature at this interface is greater than the T1 temperature. So similarly we can define Q2 is equal to minus thermal conductivity divided by temperature gradient. So in this case we will be defining T1 minus T2. T1 will be the final temperature and T1 will be the initial temperature. If we take the negative sign inside, we will be getting T2 minus T1. This will be the same as that in the first case. So now we are getting two equations. Q1 is equal to this and Q2 equal to this heat flow. And the total heat flow, whether it is going from this side or it is going from the right side, it will be the resultant of these two heat flows. So we can express these two equations separately over here. So now T is our field variable. So again we will be separating this T1 and T2 in the form of the column vector, and Q1, Q2 are the load imposed on the system, and the load in this time are imposed onto the system in the form of the heat flux. So we will be getting this type of the equation, Ke by Xe, T1, T2 equal to Q1, Q2. So finally we will be taking Ke, conductivity is assumed to be constant within a composite slab, and X divided by Xe, that is the width of the slab. So again we will be getting the diagonal terms as the positive unity terms, and off diagonal terms are the negative unity terms. So T1 will be the temperature on the first node, T2 will be the temperature on the second node, and Q1, Qi and Qj are the heat flux from the left side and from the right side. So again these equations can be written in the form of the Kt is equal to X or Kp is equal to X. Let us consider another example for building the elemental equation. This time we will be considering the flow of a fluid through a network of pipe. So there will be, in this system we will be having 7 nodes and 7 elements which will be interconnected to each other. Let us isolate any earth element from this network of the pipe. So the length of the element is Le, I is the input node and J is the output node. So the flow, lubricant inflow or the fluid inflow at the ith node is Qi, and Qj is the outflow at this node. Let's D is the diameter of the pipe, Pi being the fluid pressure at the ith node, and Pj is the fluid pressure at the jth node. Assuming steady state incompressible and laminar flow, the fluid flow equation through this pipe can be expressed as a function of the diameter and viscosity of the pipe and the pressure gradient along the length of the pipe. So let us assume that Qi is the flow entering at the ith node. So the quantity of the lubricant entering through the ith node will be expressed as a function of the pressure gradient at the ith node. So we are using the negative sign here because the fluid will flow along the direction of the negative pressure gradient. So we can say that pressure at the jth node will be less than the pressure at the ith node, and the pressure gradient is calculated as the P final minus P initial divided by the length of the element. So in the first case Pi is greater than Pj. Now let us assume that the Qj is the flow inside the lubricant at this location, at the jth location. So Qj can be expressed as the function of this pressure gradient at the jth node, and it can be expressed as Pi minus Pj divided by the length of the element. So here Pi will be the final pressure and Pj will be the initial pressure. So in this case, if the lubricant has to flow from the jth to the ith node, then the Pj must be greater than the Pi. And if we sum these two flow, then we will be obtain the net flow through the system. So now these two equations, Qi is equal to this equation and Qj is equal to these equations, they are rearranged in this form such that Pi, that is the pressure at the ith and the jth node, become the field variable, and Qi, Qj, that is the flow at the ith and the jth node, become the load imposed onto the system. If we arrange these equations in the form of the matrix, then again we will be getting the elemental equation of flow through an element. And again, these are the common terms which can be kept out of this matrix, and we are getting a unity matrix with the unit positive terms along the diagonal and minus unity terms along the off diagonal. Pi, Pj being the field variable and Qi, Qj is the load imposed on the system or the lubricant flow. Again, we will be getting the elemental equation in the similar form as that of Kx is equal to P.